What is the most pain you've ever experienced?
I got a parasitic infection in my eye from using contacts in the shower, transmitted by my roommate's ferret. The months of light sensitivity sucked, as my eyes were effectively open sores. Even a breeze on my face was rather painful. But then came the surgery and treatment, where they anesthetized my eye and proceeded to scrape at it with a needle while I had to look on in horror and feel my eyeball pushed up against my skull. Then for the next month I had to put literal bleach on my eye every 3 hours to sterilize it. Imagine setting an alarm, putting bleach in your eyes, trying to fall asleep amid the burning, finally falling back asleep just before the alarm goes off again for another drop. That definitely broke me. Don't beep around with contacts, kids. I was getting in my car with my dog and my breakfast. I must have gotten in at a weird angle because my knee slipped out of place and I went crashing to the ground in pain. As I got my bearings and tried to fix my leg, my dog just looked at me and ate my breakfast burritos. Edit, for clarity, my dog looking me in the eyes before eating my burritos was the most painful experience. Not the dislocated leg. Edit 2, this got more attention than I expected. I'll be putting an image of my dog on my profile. Got my foot cut off, but that wasn't the worst pain. When they removed the dressing from where they took the skin graft from my leg to replace the skin on my foot, it felt like they were peeling my skin off. Edit, guys, I really appreciate the thought, but do not give me gold for this. It was like ripping off a big, super stuck band-aid. Yes, it was the worst pain I've ever experienced, but I was okay after an hour or two and then it was just itchy. Did you see the dude who caught some beep from his roommate's ferret? He had to put bleach in his eyes for months to give it to him. Got my testes twisted and was in absolute agony for 3 hours before I got surgery. I had a student stab me once. 16 stitches across my right ribs. It sucked a lot, but when I got to the hospital and they started stitching it up, the adrenaline had worn off and the local anesthetic they gave me was not working. The doctor, who I'm pretty sure studied medicine under Dr. Mengele, was not gentle or polite about it. Feeling him pierce my skin as he stitched me up made me throw up and black out. Had an ovarian cyst that burst. First it felt like normal period pain. Fast forward an hour later, I am throwing up in the bathroom and crying. Of course I had no painkillers in the house and it was around 6 a.m. so no store was open. The only thing I could think of doing was drive to work because I knew there was medical kit with painkillers. So I drove there in complete agony, very safe. I took few painkillers and went to lie on the conference room floor. Nice surprise to my colleagues when they arrived. After that episode I got endometriosis diagnosed. Edit, grammar for clarity. Also, I am so sad to hear all your stories. So many of us suffering this. I hope you will find a way to ease your pain and to get diagnosed. Appendix rupturing. Thought I was just having a stomachache, waited in bed for hours, got so bad I couldn't walk. Ambulance came and had to wheel me out in the fetal position. Emergency surgery, almost died, hospitalized for 2.5 weeks. It was ugly. Gallstones trying to move through a tiny space that wasn't big enough for them. When I was in 3rd grade I broke my arm jumping off a swing. It was Labor Day weekend, so I guess all the good doctors at the hospital were on vacation, and the resident who was treating me set my arm wrong. They didn't notice until I went back for follow-up x-rays a couple weeks later, to check how I was healing. My bones had already partially healed, but the angle was wrong, so what they did was saw open a bit of my cast and insert a wedge device, and crank it until my forearm was straight. They needed to bend it a good 30 degrees. I didn't get any sort of painkiller. Hurt like beep. In a convo with someone who was stung by a box jellyfish, say if they'd had a gun they would have shot themselves, no question. The guy was a university/college professor, really genuine individual, which made what he said all the more real. Box jellyfish are the most venomous creatures on Earth. Yeah, Australia. Migraines, whenever I get them I just crawl under my bed covers and try not to die. Kidney stones. Multiple around 4 millimeters. It was like the worst poop cramp after doing 10,000 squats while being hit in the nuts. When I was 12, I was hit by a car at 45 miles per hour. The impact snapped my left humerus and shattered my left tibia/fibula. I was thrown 20 feet into a busy intersection. In the ER, the attending decided to lift my broken leg without support in order to get a board under it. Everyone told him not to, from the EMTs to the trauma nurse to my mother, who had been an RN for years. He did it anyway. The pain sent me into a grand mal seizure. Every muscle in my body contracted, including my left tricep, deltoid, and trapezius, which caused the jagged edge of my broken arm to slip its setting and move toward my neck. I never once lost consciousness. Edit: since people are asking, and in some cases challenging my story, I was, of course, in severe shock for the entire experience and have only a spotty memory of most of it. This was 30 years ago, after all. But my mother, an RN who at the time had trauma and ER experience, has always been adamant about the fact that I maintained consciousness throughout the whole episode. I've always taken her word for it. Everyone saw the doctor lift my leg. As soon as I started seizing, the EMTs, the nurses, and my mother all moved to restrain me as much as possible to minimize further injury. My mother was the first to see my humerus fracture slip its setting. I don't know if anyone told the doctor off after the fact, but I learned some time later that he was the doctor in charge of my PT and outpatient recovery. Last I knew, years after the fact, he had become a board member for that hospital. My parents did not sue the driver. The street was a 3-lane, and I wasn't crossing at the intersection. The driver that hit me was illegally using the middle turn lane to pass another car, which is why he was going so fast in a 35. The police report only made mention of the fact that I was not at the crosswalk, but said nothing of the driver's illegal maneuver or negligence. I actually kind of feel like we'd have had a solid court case, but my parents never took action, which I now know to be typical of them, but at 12 I had no idea. Edit 2, names are hard. One time I woke up to terrible pain in my lower stomach. It was so bad that I kept on fainting and throwing up. I was taken to the hospital and they couldn't find anything, then the pain just magically went away. Physical? Knee surgery. I was literally counting minutes until I could take another painkiller. Emotional? Watching a 12-year-old find out her mom was dead. I can still hear her crying. When I was 11 my front tooth got knocked out in one piece. I find the tooth and run home. It was a holiday so the dentist said to save time clean it up in milk and put it back in, and he will stabilize it once we get to his clinic. So my mom has to out the tooth back in the gaping fresh wound. I was crying and my mom was like, "Oh shut up, it's not that bad." I lost it again like 27 years later. I once had an infection inside my wisdom tooth. That was the worst pain I've experienced. Painkillers didn't touch it, and just breathing was agony. I spent 2 days awake before I could get it removed. I know a lot of people have said kidney stones, but I got added agony. I was on the floor writhing from the pain and I had to vomit. The pain of a stone felt like someone actively had their hand inside me and were ripping around inside. I couldn't control my body enough to sit up to vomit, but I got to my side at least so I wouldn't choke on the foam. I heaved and the pressure made my vision technicolor with pain. That's when I popped a disc in my back from an old rowing injury. I momentarily marveled that I could even register this new agony. Just like the first time, white hot fire ran up my spine and I couldn't breathe anymore. I remember begging for death in my head. I couldn't scream as vomit was now shooting out of my nose because my jaw had clenched shut. I started basically drowning and my whole body was vibrating. Eventually I passed out. When I came to I started to sobbing because I was still alive. Not from relief, I was so utterly disgusted that I was alive. That's when my roommate found me. I still get flashbacks of how badly I wanted to die. I know for a fact if I had had a knife I wouldn't have hesitated to plunge it straight into my neck. It is a terrifying memory. I had to get a physical for the Navy. They found minute amounts of blood in my urine. You couldn't see it when I peed, only using their testing process. They had to figure out what was wrong with my bladder. First was an ultrasound of my full bladder. Annoying, but not painful. Then, apparently, the prostate can cause that type of issue. Got a finger up the butt. Again, uncomfortable, but not really painful. The last thing was to shove a camera up my urethra. They gave me Vicodin and Valium, the same thing that gave me for my vasectomy. Nothing else pain-wise was given. As soon as they shoved the camera up my dick, I sobered up and felt the most intense pain ever. They proceeded to wiggle it around in my bladder and trip my bladder is full switch. Got done and tried to pee. Visible blood this time and I felt violated for the rest of the day. Found the same blood about 4 years later. Made them knock me out because I wasn't doing that awake again. Nothing conclusive was found. Doc said that some people have microscopic amounts of blood in their urine. I happen to be one of the unlucky ones. My mom died right before quarantine. A drunk girl decided to start cooking during a house party at my place while I was in university. She filled a pan with oil, turned it on max, then went outside to have a smoke. I was not in the kitchen. Few minutes later, the smoke alarm goes off as the oil had started to burn. I didn't realize how full it was, and when I grabbed the handle, The boiling oil spilled back onto my hand, and I got severe burns all over it. The pain just kept getting progressively worse for hours and hours. Ended up getting a skin graft. I have pics somewhere, if anyone is interested lol. I've also had massive kidney stones and have been stabbed twice. Oil burn greater than kidney stones greater than stabbings. Edit, here are the pics. NSFW and apologize for low quality. Laptop webcams were pretty beep in 2010. Pic 1, link redacted. Pic 2, link redacted. This was before the skin graft, about 24 hours after the incident. IUD insertion. It was brief, but the worst pain I ever experienced. The nurses said I handled it well, then I proceeded to throw up at a stoplight while driving home. Apparently some women only feel mild discomfort during the process. One time my IBS got so bad at a party that I had to call my wife to the loo to hold my hand because I couldn't take it anymore. If it had gone on much longer, I honestly think I would have passed out. I once had to reinflate my own lung after a 500cc pleural effusion was drained from one side. Every breath was agony. I had to keep taking deep breaths over several hours to fully expand my lung to full size. Doctors gave me Dilaudid every 2 hours that didn't even touch the pain. Only time I've ever gotten close to hitting a 10/10 pain. I had a wart on the inside of my nose removed without any type of numbing. It took 2 hours. Dehydration. I was in college and I got mono terribly. I had a high fever and my throat was mostly closed and I couldn't swallow at all. Eventually everything just felt like a dull pain, until I'd move and it would become a very sharp pain. I remember somehow getting to the campus medical ward, and the nurse telling me I was at a 10 pain level. In any case 2 IVs later and I was feeling a lot better. Later on I broke 2 vertebrae in a car crash and the dehydration was considerably worse. Doctor treating my ingrown toenail without numbing it. Tore an abdominal muscle once because I had a respiratory infection and wouldn't stop coughing. Because it was a core muscle, I could do almost nothing without experiencing excruciating pain. I've broken several bones. But when I dislocated my left knee, that was by far the worst pain. My kneecap spun around the backside of my knee. And took all the nerves and tendons with it.
May your day be filled with joy and happiness. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more quality content every day.